I see him right here.
I'm sitting here.
Where's the other burner?
Right, they're on either side of me, I'm surrounded by Vernon's and Vernon's.
Who's I waiting to do the first case? It's not a case, it's dead in them.
Make this off the Facebook. He's really worried. Isn't it good?
If it's important, I will remember it. I know that it's not the way ours is. That's why I don't want to sign nothing. Not one paper. Just executive director to the government, that's all.
Because you took that break, you must be better.
No breaks. Yeah. Yeah. Since when?
No,
Since when?
when they got the money. When that was.
I could see him getting paid with his job,
Yeah.
but it needs to
I've
be
always said,
transparent,
yeah, I've always said that, but it needs to be in the minutes.
When we haven't seen the finance, so since we became board.
I forgot to mention that.
no one can manage it.
Oh. Good, this
So,
year,
the last 2 weeks.
the cord when see with everything's loud, yeah, I could hear a mosquito go burp. Jeez, it's loud.
It's right down now.
Aw.
It was going to Sam Dill's lemons. I'm glad he's got urinate now.
I can control it.
Dale's gonna phone in for
Oh.
Dale.
That one,
Oh, yeah.
Dale, but
I'm just looking at that one.
Should I
that was,
wait?
that was killing
Wait
me.
a little bit longer? Yeah.
Another couple months.
We got one already.
Gee, Crystal's not here again.
Oh, you can do it part time?
Guess so, I left all my stuff at
45 minutes. We were on it last night for 45 minutes.
Oh, is that right?
It was only about 15 minutes, but Norman was.
I knew you were gonna bring my name.
But Norman was there, so.
No, not this time.
Tonight you got Robin.
Yeah, not this time.
Sure. That would help. I didn't bring any of my stuff. I left it all at home because I was going to somewhere else.
You're gonna speak to that letter too.
Yeah.
Fundraising letter.
Is it in here?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm anxious posting that
Hey,
over here.
I was good.
This
I
one,
was
that's
really.
it. You gotta face your fears.
Hey,
Sometimes there's nothing there to fear.
yeah.
They kept them overnight.
I'm so happy they were all good to you.
Mm-hmm. Lots of respect. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
F1.
If only.
F1.
Okay.
What?
F1.
F1.
Why are you giving that shit?
In code.
Was the 27th,
Oh God, I have to look in my purse, Elaine.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Since Australian bothered
The one
to
before
get
that
my
was
new
the-
glasses, but.
What agenda are you looking for? What date?
The last fundraising committee.
Oh, yeah, that's a different one. I thought you were talking
I
about.
would give you my notes, but I'm still trying to decipher it.
Well, you could jump in anytime.
And that's for a small size meeting. It's so big.
It snowed there, hey? Nice pictures.
Used to like,
Okay.
when I first got this.
Si Jibbit. When Logia Bogans. Cedar poles, the cost.
When you have no seat, have it. Bestemd nog ziet goed op.
Oh nee, habis we ran to get.
Ja.
Ich go cabin. I'm gonna get doing. Madam.
Dus je moet kennen dat. We zeggen niet hoe
Hey, lo simistico solar bulbs ladi on the left. Or Tracy cabin.
Good.
So then the sheep look on God's feet. Like it get it. Especially over here with no weather.
Gee.
Now we could start.
We
Yeah.
can start now.
You got a spot in the paper, Eddie? You're the boss. I burned myself doing wood.
Listen now, what gets up? It's like when you fundraising or Gitxsan when the folks were dinner did Gitxsan help.
Oh, yeah.
It felt so positive. It's good stuff, good.
Oh, that's been very
Hey,
nice.
good leader. Your niece, Erica, she's a really good boss.
I'm having one tomorrow.
Nee, dat is een nice private
Silk weekend. Go from next one. Like you pick. Jeez, that looks like a big roast. Extenki. Extent next day.
We hebben die in gehad, hè.
Nee, let's go.
Lovely leftovers. If you don't want your dog to eat leftover, give it to the crow. Check wil graag gedaan. Check how about it? Okay, we roll.
Raven, living crow.
Raven, well, I don't know, just one big one, maybe. The rest are small.
You go much get your
Die gezicht is lang. Op kerk zeg ik het gedaan, die hebben we gewoon zo.
I don't get it. You know what he next year?
Takay Zach kiitam tahawi terrace in nilis laka nilis some socks extend the sun dried nilis laka nilis Zach in the belti ladi Ulai takami ni son yan nilis nalit nam di masam test binedi tested kasan din 43 rabis ko ba lis ko
Right, and then I just,
Oh, lakyip committee when, I mean, lakyip board when we,
Oo. Kasi hindi.
lipget trust.
Oh.
Yeah, lakyip lipget. You know, sa when
Oh.
Julie Balzerati. So I've been to 4 or 5 meetings this week. I told them I'm getting to be like you guys, sitting in different meetings. Yeah, you guys, you and Calvin both said they always try to call me, and then I said no. I don't have any records of any emails or phone of the office. I phoned. I think maybe one of Amelia's scared.
It's on our agenda that we do call.
A couple of times, maybe in September, but not all those meetings you guys have. And if I get 1 day notice, I can't make it, or 2 day notice. Can't make it. Usually busy.
I'll give it to Lawrence. Oh, I don't do that. This week I just read it out.
Oh, you don't mind? Not vacation. That's right. After
778-020.
changes on.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. What's yours, Lawrence? Online or?
I know, I thought, that's because we, like, I was like, what did you do? But then, I saw.
I guess we could start.
Get up on the territory.
Yeah, I turned my phone off at the last meeting. They said it's $20 fine. And if it
Hello?
$50.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And it's another $50.
Kilom salam on good night. I'm gonna get Norman. The little like we
Gitxsan lahat. Lahat masasama ang sawatwan ng rawit ng ansan hun. Kedam din teman ten humlaksat hun. Mun ruskil takyak teman. Amen.
Okay, Gitxsan agenda, administration, review December 12th, review November 19th, Gitx governance notes, committee updates, crisis management team, jurisdiction standing committee, fundraising committee, Gitxsan government structure draft will be presented by Gordon. Other, any burning issues on the table?
Bonus,
Bonus.
Christmas bonus.
Okay, Christmas bonus.
That's burning.
Burning.
Burning, eh? Missla.
Hey. I heard other people are getting it, so I figured I'd put that on the agenda today.
Okay, one addition, Christmas bonus. Any more? Need somebody to adopt the agenda? There's one addition.
So move.
So moved, seconder? Crystal, seconded. All in favor? Passed. Review December 12th, Gitx governance meeting agenda.
Kindly scope as agenda and minutes and then.
Yeah. Gitx governance meeting agenda, yes. Oh, please.
Please approve it, Sigyo.
Oh, 12th today. Okay. Okay, review November 19th then. Need to adopt the November 19th. Okay. I'd like to adopt the November 19th, seconded by
Second. Second. Oh, this my second. No, I third.
Walk along.
Gosh, it's a large learning.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded November 19th, 2019. All in favor? Passed. Any business arising from the minutes? Guess not, eh? No business arising?
Just what is the outcome of that announcement by Kevin Higgins? We reached on that, what is the outcome of that?
Oh, they had a feast. They had a fundraising feast in Gitxsan, December 1st, last Sunday, and they raised over 16,000. What's the name? Give me the over 16,000, and they hung on to 13,000 to help rebuild their camp, and then they paid out expenses that night. That was, yeah. That was about it. Yeah, they had a feast. And they went to their camp to take back their camp too before that. The next day after this meeting. So a few people showed up in the cold, I guess, and they had a ceremony.
Okay, I was just curious what all went down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Business arising from November 19th? If not, we'll move on to committee updates. Crisis management team. Norman.
Okay. Okay, we had the meeting December 5th. Everybody was present there. The only person who sent his regrets were Art Wilson. For the government, August 21st to Elisa Fernando. Okay, within that letter, it was from Elisa Fernando. There was a question about a conflict of interest between GWA and the Gitxsan governance table. And then there was questions about media release regarding GWA. Is it subordinate to Gitxsan government? Joint media release from Lake Babine, Wet'suwet'en, Gitxsan. place Gitxsan government in a subordinate position to DFO. Okay, that was a letter for, that was a concern from, with GWA and the governance. Okay, the letter from GWA answered these questions. And in it, they said there was no conflict between GWA and the Gitxsan government. That when the Gitxsan government they had the right to close down their fishing on their territories, and they fully endorsed that. There was no conflict between GWA and the Gitxsan government. And the press release was released so that they could support what the Gitxsan government released that previous before August. Yeah, this letter was dated November 27. So after that, there was the discussion about memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that was to be made up between GWA and the Gitxsan government. That would soften any kind of a misunderstanding between GWA and this table, because, well, the letter made that quite clear that there was no conflict of interest. One of the things that Troy Larden was very adamant about was that the numbers that we mentioned on the table, and a lot of it was 26%, I believe, that Gordon mentioned, that there, you know, when there is catch and release, at least 26% of the fish died because to us that is with them playing around with our fish. And he was quite strong about it. He said those numbers sound a little bit too high, he said. And everybody mentioned it, and they kept mentioning it. And I was the last to speak, and I said, irregardless of the numbers, just looking at the headings of your fishery, your licensing. There's sports fishing, and then there's recreational fishing, I said. Those two things point to the fact that they are playing with fish, our fish, of which we use for our nourishment. And I said, we have a reciprocal relationship with nature, and that we do not play with fish, because our basic law is respect, I said. That is the basis of our law. We respect everything. And he didn't answer any of my responses to him. But it was quite good. It was really a good meeting. So, do you guys have anything to add?
It was a pretty positive meeting between, especially the dialogue between us and Watershed. So, looking forward to see the draft of the MOU that will be put in place.
Yeah, that was really good. I think it's going forward. It looks really good. With positive attitudes in all parties. We focused on jurisdiction, trespass, our history, our laws before their laws. He seems to be a little more understanding in our ways, so I think it's really good. Troy Bird.
Any questions?
Good.
Very good, Oscar.
Any questions for Norman? He's got all the answers.
Yeah, I've got one. How does the weather fit in with you guys? The world right now is talking about the climate change and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
How
Yeah.
does this thing
Yeah,
fit in with it? Where is it at with it?
yeah, we discussed it, we discussed that at one of our meetings before, before Troy Larden was appointed. And we told him that there's too much widespread deforestation going on, and it's drying up the land, and it's not holding any water, so the land is drying up, and the trees, you know, they affect with the deforestation. They affect the climate because of the exchange of oxygen, DFO. What was it?
Deforestation.
Carbon dioxide. DFO. He said that to me. Anyways, that was what we said about the climate.
Right.
There's a bigger picture on what's happening with our salmon. You know, the little ones go out and then they go out into the deep. A lot of them don't make it back because there's another new globe or whatever they call that warm water. It's come back again. And it's going to affect our salmon quite a bit again in the near future. But it's back again, that blob or whatever they call it, warm water.
Yeah.
And that's really going to affect our fish as they're going out to sea to try and survive, and then to see them coming back. When we have a meeting at GWA, my biggest concern is the factory ships that are taking our fish out there now over the 200-mile limit. You know, they're taking our fish first, then the Americans, then we get nothing. You know, and here we are fighting amongst each other. We're not going after the Americans. We're not going after the deep sea fishermen that are taking most of our fish. We used to have lots of humpies. They finally kill them off out there. They got factory ships and they're doing work out there. And we're not doing anything about it. Well, the fisheries aren't doing anything about it here in Canada. Last summer I found out that the Americans were just fishing just half a mile away from King Colith where the boundary line is, and they were fishing 7 days a week on our sockside. You know, and we couldn't do anything about it. They don't have Canadian flags on those fish like they say when they catch them. Look, no Canadian flag. They say when they show the fish. They just mock it. So, as far as TWA goes, I sit on that board, and it's owned by the hereditary chiefs. It's not owned by anybody else. We have four clan members that are sitting on the board. One frog, one wolf, one Gitxsan, and one Laskik sitting on that GWA board. And we direct Charlie, and we try to get everything done so that nothing is harmed for our food fish. And last summer, I got mad at the fisheries because they were fishing while we were tied up on the beach. But they said, oh, they're just catching trout and steelhead. That was their big excuse when they allowed the sporties to do fishing while it was closed. They said they were only catching trout and steelhead. And
Yeah.
I bet you they were catching more than that.
Like the fish know not to be caught. You know, they're gonna catch whatever's going by.
Just wanted to add to Roddy's comment about all the obstacles that the salmon have when they leave our waters and go into the Pacific Ocean. There's also the pinniped population, namely the California sea lion. Is a very invasive species. I saw some video. They're trying to harvest, excuse me, trying to harvest some herring down in the Sailor Sea, and the one saying that had over 200 California sea lions in his net. He couldn't even pull his net. It just tore it apart. That's probably one thing that we should probably address with the DFO, is trying to get some kind of management, pinniped management in place. Just a side note to salmon population diminishment. Thank you.
Yeah, there was, we did mention that at one time, and there is also, we mentioned that when the fish come up here, they spawn, and they spawn on our territories, and the fry go down to the ocean. They mature there, and they come back here back to our territories. We told them that fish is ours, and the jurisdiction is ours. It follows them into the ocean. So they can't say we have no jurisdiction anywhere else except our territory. No, that's our fish going down there too. So
Any more comments? If not, we'll go on to jurisdiction. Dale or Lawrence?
Oh, before you go,
Good evening.
Maybe that stuff that Norman read out, can we get copies of that stuff at our meeting?
the letters?
Yeah, if we can have it in our packets, it'd be
Yeah.
good. You know,
They're all in there.
they're all in
Yeah.
there? Oh, okay.
All the letters. Maybe that's a point. Maybe you should say C2 or C1.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I
when
never,
you
I never
refer to
thought
the
I just,
letters.
yeah, I just broke everything down.
B, C, and D in
Yeah.
the package.
No F1?
I got it.
Or if you.
Good.
Aye.
Good.
Okay, Dale.
Good evening. Sorry I couldn't make it there. There's not really much to report on jurisdiction, except that tomorrow the Kisriax Watershed is going to be meeting with Minister Donaldson. So Bill is going to draft up the concerns of the table to Minister Donaldson because of not getting any response from the BC government when we do send inquiries into having to be able to meet with people that we want to meet, sort of like government to government. So he'll be doing that tomorrow morning, I guess at that office there. It's part of the Kisriax Watershed that they're going to allow some time for this. And other than that, there hasn't been too much going on. I think in the new year we should add a bit more pressure to what our jobs are and have our table introduced to the province or any feds that are out there. And for me, that's pretty well it for my little report.
I thought the meeting was 1:30.
No, that's for us. He's talking about Kispiaks.
Yeah, with Donaldson.
Yeah, but ours is 12:30, I think, with Donaldson.
12:15.
12:15 with
There's two
Donaldson.
meetings with them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
CMT, 12:15 and jurisdiction from
12:15.
11, yeah.
12:15.
Watershed, they're meeting with the Kispiaks watershed.
Yeah, oh yeah, Kispiak Watershed.
Not
yeah.
the, not.
Oh yeah, they have a little letter about, from the jurisdiction too, that they're gonna
Yeah.
present to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the letter, Vernon, you need to have E1. You need a motion from the table. You guys haven't seen this letter yet. But the other team, the Gyeets, they approved the letter. They approved the letter and the signing by Brian. So now it's up to you guys to, if you want to approve it, and then have Vernon to sign it.
E1.
E1, and then that letter is to be presented to Doug Donaldson tomorrow. So the CMT and the standing committee will probably meet with Doug at 12:15 tomorrow. And then you introduce yourselves, who you are, and then Bill Blackwater will hand this letter over and speak to the letter. And I don't know what they're doing at 11 o'clock, the Kispiaks watershed. And so I think Bill is gonna wait until the 12 o'clock meeting before he hands this letter over. So if you guys would look at the letter, and if you approve it, then you can have, did we change the top to government? Yeah. So we have the letter here, did Brian sign it? Okay. So we got the letter here, and we made the change on top as Gitxsan government, not governance. Okay, that's all you guys.
Still need clarification here. I hear 12 o'clock, I hear 11 o'clock, and I hear 12:15.
12:15 for the CMT and 11 o'clock for the Kispiak watershed. But there's also another letter that has to be presented.
CMT.
Gitxsan, crisis management team.
These guys,
Yeah.
crisis management team, they're.
And then Bill's gonna be there too with a letter from the standing committee.
So do we go there at 12:15, Doug Donaldson's office?
Just the teams, the two teams, committees, just the committees are going.
I think the open invitation is 1:30.
Another time.
Well, it sounds like 1:30 now is strictly Gyeets.
The Kispiaks watershed. What time is the
11.
Kispiak?
11.
Oh, 11.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's only two meetings tomorrow,
There's
11
only two
o'clock,
meetings.
the Kispiaks watershed is meeting.
Yeah.
And then Doug added the 12:15 meeting to meet with the
CMT.
crisis management team and the standing committee.
Mm.
And then when you read this letter, the only thing that both committees are asking for is for Doug to appoint a person. I better read you guys.
I think you better read the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it.
Copy this letter, I want it over here.
You got it. E1.
E1. You better.
Oh, you got the wrong one here.
Find out where the other is.
Yeah, this is November. You need the new
December,
one.
December 9th is the letter.
Yeah,
Last month.
there you are.
Okay, I'm up to date.
Is everybody on that now, E1? Okay, this letter is gonna be given to Doug, if you guys approve it there. And, we already have the original is sitting there for signature of, Brian, which was approved last night by the Gyeets. So at 12:15, Doug is meeting with the standing committee and also the crisis management team. Only because the crisis management team had met with him already and he suggested to have another meeting. So the crisis management team can mention what Norman's been reporting. He can talk about the no trespassing, and that we want Doug and them to stop issuing those permits. So this letter, dated December 9th, and we'll change the date on there to December 13th. And it says the Standing Committee on Intergovernmental Relations was formed by the Gitxsan government during the summer of 2019 to address issues related to the joint federal and provincial government policy and the provincial legislation related to UNDRIP. As you know, it has been 153 years since Gitxsan Wilp government alone governed the Gitxsan fisheries tenure, and that in the Skeena watershed. Second paragraph. We seek your commitment to engage with the Gitxsan government, that's both tables, to address the coexistence of our jurisdiction on the Gitxsan fisheries tenure, and that alongside the provincial jurisdiction on fisheries. We suggest you consider appointment of a deputy minister out of Victoria to engage with the Gitxsan government and this committee on a regular basis. And the reason why we are seeking that is that the government has passed a policy on UNDRIP, and they also passed legislation to implement UNDRIP. And in the policy, it says that the government can coexist with indigenous jurisdiction. So that's the issue tomorrow, is that your jurisdiction on fisheries, the ANAT, can coexist with the province. Right? They can't wipe you out, and we have to figure out what to do about those permits, because they play with the fish and waste the fish. The third paragraph says, we are wondering if your government intends to set up a separate ministry to work with First Nations in BC, or would you be leaving those matters to the various provincial ministers that have had other mandates that may be contrary to the intent of the new legislation and the policy? We thank you for your time in meeting with us. Signed, Brian Williams and Vernon Smith. I won't be at the meeting tomorrow. I'll be heading off to Vancouver.
What do you think? You did 2 tables there. You should put it down there and then to what you have.
Okay.
Put 2 tables, one east and one west. So if you go in, if you want to specifically tell them that.
Okay. So where it says we seek your commitment to engage with the Gitxsan government, put comma, Gyeets and Gigeni.
And a new sentence after that.
Huh?
Okay, a new sentence after that, this is too long, the sentence.
Is it, which one?
The one you're on?
Oh, it's too long of a sentence?
Yeah. To address the coexistence of jurisdiction on Gitxsan tenure.
Okay.
And then you go after that, oh, that has, it is really quite long and not very clear. You see if the commitment
Right after Gitxsan government.
Oh, yeah, I think I got it now. I think I got it now. Okay, after you have Gyeets and Gigeni, you say this committee would address.
Okay.
Yeah, this committee would address the coexistence of jurisdiction.
your commitment to engage with the Gitxsan government. Yes,
There's gonna be a
and
committee?
Period.
Another committee? We're
The
running
Gitxsan
out of
government
bodies.
would address.
We will address.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will address.
We will address the coexistence.
Or this
of
is to
jurisdictions.
address for the purpose of the meeting would be to, purpose of the,
Gitxsan beginning, period. Right? And then we will address M. Num or M?
I'll say.
Don't say that other word.
Okay, so there it is, if you guys agree with that, and then, we'll need a motion to pass that.
Okay, we need a mover to, pass the, Gitxsan governance, regarding provincial representation of Gitxsan indigenous government on UNDRIP legislation. Need a mover? Moved by Ray, need a seconder? Crystal? It's been moved and seconded with the corrections. All in favor? Yes.
Was Billy gonna dance in with this letter?
Okay, we're done with the jurisdiction. Thank you, Dale.
Yep.
Fundraising committee. Kristen. Pick on you.
Your
Anita is the
turn.
co-chair. I didn't bring my whole package.
Yeah, same here. I got some notes from Elaine.
Yes.
So basically, last meeting was November 27th. We went over our terms of reference and made a few not too many changes. And then we gave a little update amongst ourselves about our reporting to the Simgi Get of what the fundraising was all about, and clarified all the Simgi Get's questions to Mr. Connors, and he apparently Kathy Blackstock and I did okay with trying to answer all the questions that were thrown at us. So they were almost all the same, the Guggenich and the Gitz. So it's a fundraising committee, and we need to raise up to $6 million by March 31st. And Rick gave us a little more information that night, where the percentage of shareholders' ownership kind of is what would you call it? Kind of living, like it goes up and down anyway. It's not a set percentage. It all depends on how much the private owners invest, how much GDC invests, how much all the shareholders invest. So our aim is to keep those down and keep ours up, so that gives us more percentage of the shares, right up to 53%. So we've raised $4 million or $3 million, and we borrow the rest. We could still pay the loan off with the interest from what it makes. So it'll be always moving back into paying that loan off. So it's better to owe and be an owner of a higher percentage.
I owe so much.
And
Still alive.
with that, Crystal can talk about, what? Talk about the letter, so we have a letter here, F1 dated December 12th, and it's a template, a letter of support to use as an ask for money. So it's a letter from the Hazelton Bioenergy to request funding to invest into, or to give us money, just to give us money, not invest or not to loan, but we're going to be asking outright for money.
Yeah, so the letter is a requirement for the Community Opportunity Readiness Program funding application. So it needs to have the support of
The whole nation.
the whole nation, the interested parties in there. So this letter template on F1 was presented to the Gyeets for their support, and so that's what our fundraising committee is asking of this table of the Gitxs, is to be supporting the Hazelton Bioenergy torrefied wood pellet project, so we can access the different funding, because there's grants and donations and sponsorship that the committee is looking at getting money. So we keep our stake in there to be the primary shareholder for the project, and that way we have more voting control, those type of things, to keep the funds within the Gitxsan Nation versus going to other shareholders. So that's what this letter is for. And I think in the first sentence, though, it would have to be changed, because we've got government and governance kind of interchangeable happening, so then it should be on behalf of the Gitxsan government. Gets chiefs, not governance. So that's one noted difference.
In government.
Very first paragraph. Dear Sir, Madam, on behalf of the Gitxsan government, gets chiefs.
I see, and then the chairperson signs it, and it says Gitxsan government.
Yep, and the top line
Good
says
eye.
Gitxsan government.
It's gotta be consistent.
Yes.
So we had discussed that, we have all the chiefs sign it, but it's kind of difficult to get all the signatures. So instead, we have a motion to put on the table that supports the signature of the chairperson, and the motion will be coming from this table, from all the chiefs. And the motion reads, lost it. Do you have it on you? Sorry.
Somewhere here. Crystal has it.
Do you have it, Crystal? The motion for it to...
I've got the terms of reference.
I've got the terms of reference. I've got my notes from last
The
meeting.
Catherine's report to the Gyeets and the agenda from our meeting. Not the motion. I'll just switch, because we're gonna change. Give you the original.
You took it back? Because I don't have it here. We're gonna change it to
So it's gonna be this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll attach it to the letter.
Okay, so this will be an attachment to this letter of support. And it reads, the following motion has been made by the Gitxsan government at a duly convened meeting on December 12th, 2019. In attendance at the duly convened meeting were the following Gitx chiefs and whoever's here. There's some missing, but I won't read it.
Fill that in.
Yeah, we'll fill that in. The Gitxsan government are in support of the application to Community Opportunity Readiness Program, which is CORP, and so move that Vernon Smith is appointed as chairperson to sign the letter of support or to support the application for funds to support the Hazelton Bioenergy Pellet Plant. Motion, 2019, December 12th, 04. The Gitxsan government give full support to Hazelton Bioenergy Limited in pursuing the pellet plant project. Moved by, and then second.
You need a mover?
That's just for him to sign on behalf of Ray.
Ray? Need a seconder? Moved by Ray. Need a seconder? Larry, seconded.
Larry or
Gitxsan.
Lawrence?
Which one?
Larry.
Larry.
You guys can't sit beside each other.
Lawrence, he's there.
I know.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Passed.
She's fine.
And so that was a motion for Vernon to sign the letter. Does that mean we have the support of our Gitz table to sign the letter?
That's what it
Do we have
means,
another-
isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what the motion read.
Making
Yeah,
sure.
that's part of it. eh?
Yeah, it's included in the.
Yeah, it was included. It said that, give full support to Hazelton Bioenergy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Eh. YM, huh? YM dit Robin. Nej, dit move, nej, dit send it.
Is that it for the fundraising committee?
Extent of your Gitxsan.
If nobody has any questions.
Any questions for the fundraising committee?
When are you guys gonna hit the Taltan up for a loan?
For a loan?
Yep. They got millions of dollars.
We're gonna be standing in line, I guess, because everybody will probably be hitting them up. They apparently have a whole pile of money at the moment.
Yeah,
Millions.
7 million dollars is nothing to them if we can get a loan from them.
No, like a sweet little simple man.
Imagine, go Shams.
Expenses paid by Hazelton.
Yes, what did?
That is
That's
six. And there's just.
They got
Ray,
two
when I was
pots.
reading- Yeah, they got two. One was 6 million for something, and
Well, they
they're doing really well.
had a 104 million agreement with mining province way back in the summer. Then they've had a recent 13 million for training with their people, with mining companies.
Motion, imagine.
Any more questions for? Yes, I guess not. We'll move on to Gordy, Gitxsan government structure.
Okay, that's G. G1. You guys all got it?
Yeah. Okay.
G1. Good. All right. This year is, there's a working group set up by the First Nations, Summit, Canada and BC. And what they're looking at is putting together a fiscal structure for implementing the UNDRIP and in the provincial legislation. And they're looking at funding self-government structures and jurisdiction. And as you know, the rest of BC, they're all under the Indian Act Band Council, and the Gitxsan are the hereditary system. So Brian and I are going to meet with, well, we're in that working group, and we're meeting on December 17th at 9 o'clock in the morning in Vancouver. So this is the document we'll be presenting. It's a draft. It says Gitxsan Wilp Government Structure, Fiscal Matters, and it's a draft. And we'll be presenting that on Tuesday. We had submitted another proposal on December 11th, and that was for BC Capacity Initiative. And that is to implement 6 an act that you guys will be picking, determining which 6 an act if we're successful with that application. And that proposal will start on April 1st if we're successful, for 1 year. This 1 year, it's a proposal to fund the Gitxsan government, the Gyeets and the Gyeets. So you look to G2, the G2 on the 3rd paragraph, starting on the 3rd sentence. As the promise of democracy is to protect all individual and economic rights, this does not happen for the Gitxsan because of the governance gap in the Constitution and in the Skin of watershed. Canada now has the opportunity to achieve full democracy by supporting Gitxsan government's jurisdiction over the fisheries tenure, an act. And you go to the 4th paragraph, and that's the second last sentence. As a result, the Gitxsan government on June 18th and May 19th closed the Skin of watershed to all recreational fishers and holders of permits and licenses. Such holders of permits and licenses are considered trespassing. This is now extended to the 2020 fishing season in the Skin of watershed. And then the proposal goes on to talk about the Wilp government. That's each of you, and you all know that. It goes into into the next page. But you should read that when you have the time. So all of G3, you read that, is all connected to the Wilp government. And then you go to G4. Go to G4 and it says head chief of the Wilp. And you all know this, the leader of the Wilp is the head chief. And on and on and on. You all know that, what it says. And then on the bottom, decision making. And you all know you're the primary decision maker. There's general and specific matters that are dealt with. And you all know how you do that. You've been doing it. So you go to G5. Go to G5 and you see financing Gitxsan government. And it says here, Gitxsan government will govern the minimum jurisdiction on the fisheries tenure and act. It will not be operating or offering any public services such as parks or garbage. As a government filling a gap in the Canadian Constitution, it would receive grants from Canada and British Columbia in its simple function with jurisdiction over Gitxsan fisheries tenure and act. The goal is to develop an approach to reflect the division of responsibilities between Gitxsan government and the other two governments by developing an equalization system for Gitxsan government. Implementation of a general equalization grant system is relatively easy. In this proposal, Gitxsan government is determining its budgetary requirements without setting up what taxes and rates to raise sufficient revenue. There are many types of grants in Canada as follows. The first one, revenue sharing. The provincial government in BC will share its revenues with Gitxsan government on a fixed formula basis. Block grants. Funds given to Gitxsan government that is free to spend on anything it wishes. Equalizing and per capita grants are kinds of block grants. Equalizing. Grants to governments with low or no revenues so that the government can provide equal levels of public services. The federal government provides equalization grants to poor provinces. BC government provides larger grants to poor school districts in BC, and that's Section 36 of the Canadian Constitution. Per capita grants. A grant to the Gitxsan government of a fixed amount per person. Gitxsan are at least 14,000 people. Categorical grants. Grants given by one government to another for a specific purpose. The federal government and provincial government give all kinds of categorical grants. Some are for economic development projects, some for sports facilities, etc. Categorical grants are usually at the sole discretion of the giving government. Sometimes they are used for political and patronage purposes. Next paragraph. In practice, it is common to accept funds from other governments, but along with those funds often come restrictions on their governance processes. The federal government would provide equalization payments, which reflect the low level of wealth and income of Gitxsan people that have income and wealth below the Canadian average. The goal would be to provide decision-making in the Skeena watershed with a fixed formula for equalization grants. And this here is important, the next sentence. Equalization grants and remove the conditional nature of ad hoc grants to First Nations at the discretion of the Department of Indian Affairs. Like the nation rebuilding, that's an ad hoc grant. We're going to apply every year. The BC Capacity Initiative proposal we put in, we're seeking an ad hoc grant. This may require an initial grant in the amount, and I've amended this and added more to this document that we will be dealing with on Tuesday. So what I put in there is this may require an initial grant in the amount of 3.5 million for studies of the fiscal implications of Gitxsan government. What are the implications of this government? There's about 48 head chiefs. You need a salary. You need to be able to have a room to meet all the time. You have to prioritize the government over everything else. Like Gitxsan, he can't go see his girlfriend in Victoria if there's a government meeting coming on.
Or in the town foundation.
Oh, where? So those are the things that you're not an ad hoc committee anymore. You're not dealing with negotiation process with the government. You are the government. And you've been the government for 153 years since Confederation, and 8,000 years before that. So this may require a two-stage process with an initial contract for a detailed fiscal analysis plan and a rough preliminary estimate, followed by a more detailed analysis of an active Gitxsan government. Currently, the Gitxsan bands receive about $80 million a year. And that's totally separate they deal with reserves, and then you deal with Lahip. You deal with 33,000 square kilometers of territory. And it's billions and billions of dollars of resources. That's just above ground. When you get underground, there's billions and billions yet, including the water. Currently, Gitxsan government forbids trespassing by holders of angling and recreational fishing permits and licenses onto Gitxsan fisheries tenure. And that, the federal DFO and provincial Flinroyd issue fishing permits and licenses to fish within the whole province of BC, including marine waters. These permits and licenses do not authorize trespass on the Gitxsan fisheries tenure and add. Clearly, all these jurisdictions can coexist. And that's the purpose of the CMT. We're trying to figure out how we could coexist. Maybe these recreational fishermen and anglers will never be able to play with fish on Gitxsan territory. They're allowed to do it everywhere else in BC. So it could be accepted. It's not an impossibility. So in addition to this that's been added to the document, I set out the two groups, the Gyeets and Gyeets, that you need your own building, your own government building, that you need a clerk. Each of you needs a clerk to work every meeting. Right now we have Elaine doing this, and she's quite overworked trying to keep up with all these meetings and keeping me awake. So what we're looking at, so it's very important tomorrow when you guys meet with Doug Donaldson, and you tell him that he has to appoint a deputy minister to deal with your government. There's 48 of you, and there's 33,000 square kilometers of territory, and $1 trillion worth of resources.
You're talking to the CMT,
Yeah.
who will be meeting with Doug.
So the committee.
Hopefully modified tree.
So what we're going to present also on.
Tomorrow? Is it open for all of us to see Doug Donaldson tomorrow?
No, just the committee.
Well, that's not fair, because Ray handed me a book wanting to start to do the watershed.
There'll be lots to do.
And we can't talk on that tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can't talk on Gitxsan watershed tomorrow.
They're not. They're talking about fisheries. Just fisheries. Not talking about Lahip.
Well, if Doug Donaldson comes, there was a package handed out, and
The Kispiox watershed is talking about Lahip, 11. But keep your patience, because all of you are going to be working. And I'm looking at the ones that are not on any committees, and that's Rod Sampere, Larry Marsden. We're going to be setting up more committees. We need to set up the ethics committee. And then you're going to see when the meetings with the government starts to go, we're going to need more standing committees. We're going to need standing committee on this, standing committee on that. So it will be picking up, because you are the government.
Pardon, you know, I really have a problem with the last sentence there. These permits and licenses do not authorize trespass on the Gitxsan fisheries tenure. That sort of sounds, doesn't sound right.
Oh.
These permits and licenses are I think it would be better if you say these permits and licenses are authorizing trespass on the Gitxsan fishing tenure.
But they're not.
I know, but it doesn't really say that though.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
if you say these licenses are permitting trespass on or on at,
They just issued them, they just issued a license.
yeah, and they permit trespass on
No.
our, on our, on at,
No, that's just the next.
contrary to our laws.
Yeah, it doesn't permit trespass. They just get the license,
Oh, okay.
okay? So that's,
Yeah, you see, that's where the confusion is.
Yeah.
It's confusing, this sentence.
yeah, those licenses do not permit trespass. Even the fee simple lands, farming lands, resort fee simples, those guys have to stay away from those places,
Sounds good.
okay?
Yeah.
So
Maybe
now
you
we're
should-
saying, now
maybe-
we're,
Maybe you should put permit in there, permit, instead of
And
authorized.
then you're gonna permit them then.
No, do not permit.
yeah, authorized is connected to legislation, okay? Authorized authority, that kind of stuff. Takya.
Yeah, yeah, I always have trouble with this because it doesn't, you know, it just doesn't ring.
It shows the weakness of those permits, that they do not authorize trespass. So when the guy comes along with his fishing permit, you can ask him to leave, he has to leave,
Yep.
because the permit doesn't authorize him to trespass. Just like your driver's license, doesn't authorize you to trespass.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's just, Norman and I are just two lawyers disagreeing with each other, that's what we're trained in law school. Okay, so that's what's gonna be dealt with on Tuesday, so that just updating you on that. It's starting to pick up steam, so you guys you gotta get stronger. You gotta have your patience, keep your patience. Cause it's building, eh? Look, we got three groups now of chiefs working. They're all working hard. The one committee's gonna be the richest, they're gonna have $6 million.
Yeah.
All right,
And if we don't show up at the next meeting, you'll wonder why.
any more
Forgot our money.
questions?
Any questions for Gordon?
What do you mention next Tuesday, what do you mean?
Next Tuesday is,
First Nations.
yeah, next Tuesday is the working group on fiscal matters with Canada, BC, and Canada, the province of BC, and the BC First Nations.
Oh, that's your job.
Yeah,
You
there's
and
about
Ryan.
20 of us on that working group. There's about 3 from Canada, and about 3 from BC, and probably 14 First Nations.
Mostly bands.
And we really have to push this Gitxsan hereditary government, because all the rest are bands. So they don't know what to do with us. Except fund us, I hope. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Gordy. Roddy, Christmas bonus.
Well, I heard that, the, what do you call it? It's getting $1,000 to the grapevine, Kimberly, what do you call those people? That Larry's on, they got a committee that works for GPS. And I heard through the grapevine that they're getting $1,000 bonus this Christmas. And what I want to find out is what's gonna happen with the Magnificent Three that just got on. Are they getting the same bonuses as the guys that've been there all year? Or are they just getting part of it? It's not fair if they get the full 1,000 because they just started last month when they were voted on, and the board that was there before is getting $1,000. It's what I heard. I don't know how true it is, And us guys like that have the card, when we sit at the meeting, we don't get nothing at the meeting. And we're probably not gonna get a bonus. And yet we're the bosses, supposedly. Are we gonna be heading down the same road with this governance thing? It's hard to see one group of people getting a whole pile of money and then the other part of people are not getting anything. And we're doing the same work. So that's my bitch for today. Thank you. That was for Gordy to answer.
What's that?
That was for you to answer.
I think Roddy is, just talking about gossip. I don't know what he's talking about. That, I don't know what he's saying. So I can't answer that.
I missed the first part, Roddy. Who's getting the $1,000 bonus?
GTS board. That's what I heard through the grapevine. I don't know who the chair is for GTS that you can act, how much they are actually getting. Gordy should know, he's part of that group. Him and Brian. They should know all that stuff. If it's not true, tell me the truth. How much are they getting? And yet when we sit at a meeting, we have to vote, and we have voting cards. And we don't get nothing at the end of the day. It's very hard pill to swallow if I find out they're getting $1,000 and I'm getting nothing, and I'm their boss. So I need to find out for sure, and if Gordy doesn't know, he should go ask the chairperson of GTS on how much money they're getting in bonuses for this Christmas. And it's the three people that just got on the board, are they getting the same amount of money? Or are they getting less? Because they just started.
See, that's what I mean about, you gotta find out when you deal with gossip and you don't have the true facts. The GTS board, I kind of figure out what he's talking about. The GTS board had an in-camera session to talk about this issue. And so when it's an in-camera situation, I'm not authorized to say anything. And what they do is they kick the staff out. So Rod's wrong again that Gordon and Brian know about this. So what the GTS board did, they're in charge of the finance, in charge of the budget, and what they do is their business. I don't know. But if I don't know what Rod's talking about voting cards. If he's talking about voting cards, and I have to guess that he means members of GTS. So if he's a member of GTS, then he should phone and talk to his director. He has 3 directors on that board for the frogs. So I'm not authorized to say anything about an in-camera session. For one, I wasn't in that in-camera session, and so that's where it stands.
Davis is there. Gordon, stand up, just remain standing. So what you saying, this table not getting any bonus?
That's why I think we gotta stop bullshitting.
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, no, I'm not saying you are. No, I'm
Is
saying,
table getting any or what? That's my question to you.
yeah, and my answer is this, we gotta stop bullshitting. Let's just put a motion on the board, on the table here, and if you wanna have a bonus, put a motion on the table and put the amount on and deal with it. You guys are the government. If you wanna deal with the bonus and wanna get a bonus, you guys put it on the table, you guys deal with it. I can answer questions about how much is in the budgets and stuff, but just deal with it. Like Rod went way out in left field, didn't even cover the issue. I thought he was gonna put the bonus for the group on the table, but he didn't even do that. But you pointedly put it on the table, and I think Vern's put it on the table. You guys discuss it.
What price?
That's, yeah.
What price of bonus
Do
are
we
you looking
have,
at?
do we have enough money for a bonus?
Discuss if you're gonna get the
How
bonus
much?
first, and then, you know, take out the money. That's what I see.
Well, since you guys included me now, I'll say that staff should get a bonus of, I lied. I think you guys should consider probably 500 each.
Is that what's in the pot? Feasible?
I think that's safe, that's a safe amount. Because you're looking at, the Gyeets is, they had 21 chiefs at the meeting last night, and we got 11 or 12 tonight. So that's 33 chiefs, plus another 10 that come and go. So we gotta cover them too. So you're looking at probably 44 chiefs. And 44 chiefs,
22,000.
22,000. So 44 chiefs at 500 each, that's $22,000 I have to find. And I think we could find it.
It's funny that we just had a long discussion about Christmas bonuses at the last meeting I was at, and we came up with a number because last year we got very little, cause you know, our budget was low, but we gave to all the members of our group, we gave to all the members. This year, we just gave to the board and the staff, which brought the numbers down and got more. So it depends on how many, and you just brought that up, that there's 22 chiefs in the other. 44 altogether. That's a big chunk of change, so yeah, I don't see why we should get $1,000. I don't know, it's just my thought too.
How do you
I
guys
think
consider
500 is fair.
1,000 is good.
1,000's always good,
Ray,
Mr. Chair, I'd like
but
to
we're not
move
gonna be
that,
sitting here next week if we.
Gyeets governance members receive a Christmas bonus 2019 for $500 and an equivalent bonus to the staff members.
Of 500?
boy, that scared me for a while when it said 2000, 2019.
Yeah, I heard that too, 2,000, we went up, ooh.
Okay, it's been moved by Ray that the Gitx governance plus the staff receive 500 each. Need the seconder.
Robbie's second. Go ahead, Rod.
I'm still stuck with the other group that's. It hurts my feelings to know that I'm not after money, I'm not after any bonus. But knowing that somebody is getting quite a bit of money on our behalf is hurting me. You know, they're getting a nice chunk of change on our behalf.
9.
And
Yeah, I think you should put it write it in a little letter. Come in and we'll write a letter and we'll put it into the board.
Because, you know, Gordy, we didn't get any money on the last meeting we had here with the treaty office. We had a
AGM.
AGM. We didn't get nothing on that meeting. None of the chiefs got nothing on the AGM. But the board got $400. Nothing for the chiefs. That's what is hurting me. Is why are we different from that organization? And yet we're the same chiefs that vote them in that position.
I'll second Ray's motion, but I'll answer one part of your question. I think that the GTS board has been in operation for how many years? I was on the board for 5 years, and there's always funding coming in on a regular basis every year, except for 1 year when we're in court. But anyway, it's there. I think that right now, until we get really truly established, we'll have budgets, we'll have money for things like that. We're just getting established and building. And I must say, when I first started going to meetings, when Vernon first started pulling me into this political arena, it took me how many years to finally get a check. I used to sit there and say, Ansrayan, we wrote letters, my chiefs signed it, it got ignored, but I kept coming. So like you, money isn't a big issue, but fairness is. And I would look around the table, around this room, and there's people with way lower names, and they were getting checks. Yeah, so it's a good discussion to have and get that elephant out. Anyway, I second his motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the Gyeets governance receive 500 plus the staff. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
How many staff do we have? I know we got Elaine. And the 2 communications?
Linda.
Or 3? And Gord.
3.
So that's 3, 4, 5.
5 staff, that's it.
5 staff.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
All in favor? Me and Ray.
Opposed?
Are in favor.
Opposed? Passed.
Majority.
Santa Claus lives.
Somewhere.
Okay, next meeting. Gyeets governance, January what?
2020.
9th. 9th is good.
Thanks, Vernon.
Yep. January 9th?
Sounds okay to me.
Okay.
Looks okay to me.
Mr. Chair, can I take the floor for 1 minute?
Go.
Can I use the floor for 1 minute?
Can I take the floor for a minute?
Oh, go ahead.
Gigit the mana. There is Gitxsan here and there is the CDS. Gigit some Sanos Roddy Johnson. He's been having a little problem with the cancer ordeal, and he's been shipped to Prince George a couple of times, and he went for more treatment and tears, and I don't know, he never came back yet. So a couple of days in there, and he doesn't really want to talk about it, but I know it's hurting him. I know when the wife had it, she really hurt, and it hurt me a lot. Standing by there, so you guys pray together someplace at some time now and then. You guys can may include them. And that's my asking of you.
About Janos, I just received a text from him at the beginning of the meeting. He just said to tell him I am in treatment in Terrace Hospital now. That was his last text 2 hours ago. So.
So he'll be in Florida, G. Cody?
Yeah.
When is this letter supposed to come out? In the mail? Or?
Yesterday.
Burning
I missed
question.
it.
After midnight, Christmas Eve.
Probably next week, because we missed, this week, because today is cutoff.
Yeah.
And if they do emergency, it costs us, more for the process. We gotta pay, Granderjag and Bucker, our finance people. And then we gotta get the signees in.
I don't care when.
So we'll look at all that stuff. So next week at the latest.
Are you gonna phone around and say, come pick it up or what?
Yeah, come check with Elaine on Monday or Tuesday. No, our office is closed.
Wednesday.
Huh?
On Wednesday. We're open still next week.
Oh, yeah. Check next Wednesday.
Bring you up.
Okay, when's the next meeting?
When is Wednesday?
9.
When?
9.
January 9th.
January 9.
January 9th.
18th.
Everybody in agreement?
I'll make it.
Okay, January
4 o'clock.
9th.
And then
4 o'clock.
January
2020.
9th?
2020, we were gonna see clearly in 2020.
9.
We'll have 2020 vision.
4 p.m.
Thank you, Roddy. You can bring it on the table.
Santa.
Okay, we're done.
Can I put a motion on the floor for the fundraising committee? Just kidding. I'm kidding. We're
Can I
supposed to
have
fund,
500
we're
each
supposed
from
to
you?
raise money. So we have to work the hardest.
I'll ask Norm to close in prayer and remember Roddy on their prayer.
Yeah. Doctor. Wisdom organ to me. To my face. Sagatwanam. Kasayot. Kidam nin. Medum dede. Makadit ko pagkakwet. Aha, what yun. Sanos. Kan waka needed. And what is safe and willed. Pagkwet. In. Tumitamo to this. Falt is a half. Gitxsan. Tumititin needed. Within the Sakista Yatum. Amen.
Amen.
Tumog na. Nin na ideal.
Thank you.
Okay.